Sorry, my allergies have been very bad lately. I'm feeling like a real. Oh, all right. One thing, we've got that yellow lighting. I'm not a huge fan of, but don't know if we can do anything about that. Maybe if I hold the comic up, it'll change things. This is, I've talked about this actually a few times now on this live stream. This is the most recent issue of Action Comics, the beginning of Mark Waid's run of Superman. We're going to discuss Superman. We are doing our Superman coverage. My daughter's not feeling 100%. She has a headache, so she's not going to get into her favorite Superman yet. We're going to discuss the history of Superman. This has Superboy. We're going to discuss that, but first we're going to talk about the day. It was about 90 degrees out, the first of 3 days with a heat warning telling you not to be out. Mood light. I know, Doc. I don't really know what it is, but let's see if I put the comic, if it changes anything. But yeah, anyway, I don't think so. But maybe if we angle it differently. I don't know. Any better? Better? Worse? Better? Worse. Anyway, today at the store was not great. It was a lot better than it could have been. I had at least two larger hold lists come and pick up their holds because they had time on Sunday. But I had a few other people who said they were going to try to come today who didn't make it. Plus, the heat kept a lot of just casual shoppers out of the shop. It was fine. I made a big point to myself to tell myself that it's not the end of the world. I don't have expectations of every day being a great day, so I'm going to take it easy today because tomorrow will also probably be kind of dead, but I have a lot of boxes coming of restock. So just restock of damaged stuff that already came. But it was not a terrible day considering how hot it was. Tomorrow I hope to get a lot done at the shop if it is a very slow day due to the intense heat. But right now, Sundays, we're beginning our coverage on Superman. Superman is, in most people's estimation, the first superhero. He's the first powered being who fights for truth and justice. And he is once again being pulled from the comics page into the movies. A lot of people are talking about him. A lot of people are asking for books to read about him. A lot of people are discussing what is Superman, what isn't. If, as I said in a social media post I made earlier, if you're really interested in like learning all about Superman, there's a great podcast by Anthony D'Astasio called Digging for Kryptonite. Digging for Kryptonite covers everything Superman. They've been doing it for a few years. They have interviews. They actually have interviews with Mark Waid about this specific comic. That's their most recent episode. They also have interviews with actors who played Superman, tons of different writers who played Superman. They discuss specific Superman storylines, famous ones, obscure ones, whole thing. They're really great. Digging for Kryptonite. You can go look at them. They know Superman. Like, they really know Superman. Me, I'm just a comic nerd who owns a comic book shop. I'm just a guy who owns a comic book shop, has been reading comic books for 30 years. So what I know of Superman is various things I know about Superman, but it's not like Anthony over at Digging for Kryptonite, where steps by step, he's tremendous. He's done a documentary that we were in about comic shops, which came out of a podcast about comic shops that he did many very, very good episodes of different seasons looking at different comic shops. So definitely you want Superman coverage, go check out Digging for Kryptonite. What we're going to be doing on Sunday is talking about how Superman is so, and this is one of my, I'll go to it over and over again. It's my main thesis. Superman is a comic book character. And for all you want to do with Superman, you want to put him on the radio, you want to put him on the new thing called television, you want to put him in major motion pictures with Industrial Lights and Magic doing all the special effects. It's a sad emulation of what you get on the comic book page. But that's, I'm going to say that about almost any adaptation of a comic book. But more than that, let's talk about where Superman came from. Okay, there's a lot of known history. There's a lot of things that we in our history book style world have accepted as this is the story. Sequel and Sister were trying to get a comic strip made. They had this villain who had a cape and was really evil. Was like a kind of what's his name? Mongo, the evil guy from Flash Gordon, and he was the only visually interesting thing on the page, which is insane because if you've seen those pages from that comic strip, the straight Alex Raymond rips of the Martian alien cities are beautiful. But anyway, was this character, the Superman, this evil man. So they made a comic strip about him. They brought it somewhere, and it was exactly as this place was going. You know, we sell so many reprints of newspaper comic strips. These guys over at, I forgot what the company was, people who made Famous Funnies, they're killing it on original stuff. Let's turn this into something original because you know what? It's really not a strong story for a comic strip. I don't know where you would go with some guy who's very strong and stops people from shooting other people. But you know, your drawing's really strong. So we'll do, let's look for a good page. We'll do a lot of panels on a page. So we get like the whole comic strip spread out here. You're you know, and we'll turn it into a comic book, and boom, Action Comics #1 comes out, and boom. Now you don't understand what we're talking. When we say something is an instant sensation in 1930s, people were crazy for what the latest thing was. You had telegraph, you had radio, you had ways of learning about these things, but then the physical object still took a very long time to get to you. You know, if they wanted to do a newsreel, which I believe they did in 1939, the year after Superman came out, I believe there was a newsreel about the Superman comic and how popular it was. The newsreel had to film it. It had to be edited. It had to be distributed to the other places. So you're learning about Superman, and you're like, are you kidding? Everyone in the street corner is reading Superman. It's out in all the newsstands because it quickly went national. It was seen everywhere. By the time World War II hit, Superman was a cultural icon in like 5 years. The war only intensified it because he was used in tons of campaigns, tons of things. The radio show, I believe the radio show started right after the war, or even before the soldiers were all back. I could be wrong on my years. Very bad with that sort of stuff. But Superman quickly cemented himself as a major part of American culture. He was this guy who had all this power, and like America in World War II, he stood up for the right thing and did the right, whatever that meant. And like so many comic book characters, he was the original Superman because I'm going to keep going back to this. You will believe a man could fly. You would pick up a Siegel and Shuster Superman, the first 20, 50 issues of Superman, and there would be incredible things happening on the page. No one else had ever drawn this stuff before. You should see one of the great examples, Stardust the Space Wizard, which Fletcher Hanks did right after Superman, within like 3 or 4 months of Superman coming out. Fletcher Hanks goes like, he out Superman. So he goes, okay, I'm going to add all the space nonsense we've been seeing in these magazines and these things that were, I guess, precursors to the EC comics or the early EC comics. And we're going to go crazy with it. And he made his own Space Wizard. Because Superman's whole thing, the thing that made Superman Superman, is that there was action happening on the page that was insane. You know, you could see Flash Gordon and it would go, Flash Gordon takes a great leap. And you would see a panel where there's this tiny speck of a guy going across a landscape. And then you'd see another little panel, maybe this big in your comic strip, of a Martian landscape with Flash Gordon landing. And it was like, wow, that was pretty cool. And here, you would see things like Superman being flung across a page. Again, this is 86 years later, but you get the idea. Quickly, huge. To the point that Superman quickly goes through every mutation that the superhero can go through. He has a family. He's not the last son of Krypton. Powers change. He has something that can change his powers at will. He gets a dog. He has a childhood version of himself. He has a baby version of himself. Whatever you can imagine of crass commercialization of something big, Superman goes through the 50s and the 60s in rapid succession. I will recommend it. I'll probably end up mentioning it every episode that we do about Superman. Alan Moore has this amazing short story that he wrote a few years ago called Whatever Happened to Thunderman, or What They Did to Thunderman. I don't remember the exact name, but it's very much his angle on corporate comics and the issue with the idea of this. And anyway, Superman was, without a doubt, a iconic, and I mean iconic in the sense of religious, was an iconic figure within a decade or two of his creation, to the point of being mocked and ridiculed for how clean cut, all American, gosh golly, they made him in certain versions. And Superman was constantly being updated, and we have had more versions of Superman in mainstream culture, radio show, TV show, cartoon, TV show, cartoon, TV show. Like, Superman has been done to death since the 50s. He's been in pop culture. He's been a version. Someone said to me, they go, "Do you imagine they're making another Superman movie?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can." I have been an adult male, okay, for 25 years. And in that time, in the time of my adulthood, in American parlance, there have been 3 different Superman movies and about 4 different TV shows featuring Superman or a version of Superman. Like, it doesn't stop. So when we get down to something of people saying, again, like I said, check out Digging for Kryptonite, they can really get into this a lot more than I can. But what makes Superman Superman? What is it Clark Kent? Is it Krypton? Is it what the powers are? Is it what the supporting cast is? All these things that make up who is Superman is so mutable, is so changeable, is so excusable. There's so many versions of Superman. There's a cartoon version of Superman on TV right now where he is slowly getting powers like an anime hero. The more he does, he gets a little bit more power and gets a little bit better at being Superman. Where Cat Grant and Steve Lombard are ace old-style reporters, and Lois Lane and Clark Kent are fumbling new reporters. There's all sorts of ways you can play Superman. And that's kind of the joy of Superman. Once you get down to a few core principles, someone with exquisite powers using those powers to help other people, and specific trappings, the S shield, the red and the blue, maybe alien Krypton, you really don't need that 100%. And you still have Superman, Superboy, Superbaby, Superdog, Supergirl, all the supers. And that's where it becomes tricky. Because when you're trying to make a product, which is a lot more of what a cartoon, TV show, or movie is than a comic book, especially Action Comics. Action Comics has been renumbered about 3 or 4 times. But it is currently doing what we call legacy numbering, 1087. Like, Action Comics has been around for 86 years, basically. They don't really care, as long as it's decent. This guy, Mark Waid, has written Superman on and off over decades. This week, one of the new books we're going to look at on Tuesday is a compact $10 edition of his Birthright with Leniel Yu. That's a fantastic version of Superman. This version of Superman is totally different. The version of Superman that you're going to read in Birthright, Superman does not put on a costume until he is in his mid-20s. And this version has 14-year-old Clark Kent suiting up. So they're very different, but the same writer. It's the same core idea of who Superman is. But this is done very much in continuity, where we just don't care who puts the gas in the Batmobile. We're just having fun, versus the early 2000s of Birthright, which we're going through a resurgence similar to John Byrne's Man of Steel. We're looking for serious, how does Superman work, which is just a resurgence of the 60s Kurt Swan stuff. Oh, excuse me. All right. Got something in my throat. I think that's a good overview. Superman is, there is no one Superman. There's specific pieces and parts that put together can make Superman. And it's really about pulling it off. And as I keep saying, the real thing now, talked about why Superman was so exceptional, was that you would see certain things on a comic page that you couldn't see anywhere else. That is still true. The amount of work it takes for me to believe that this guy threw this rock is a lot less for the comic book artist than for the billions of visual effects artists that it takes to make one scene in a movie. We'll discuss that more as we go farther into things, how a movie really cannot replicate a comic book in any stretch of the imagination. But that'll save that to later. Tomorrow, we will discuss how slow things are. Maybe I'll get a whole bunch of books priced and I'll show off some newly priced back issues. Who knows? And Tuesday, we'll look at new books. Wednesday, new comic books. And Thursday, talk about the comic book market and what's going on with it. Until then, remember, damn it, babies, you gotta be kind.